don't like it. It's no numbers. There's no pictures. There's no videos. There's no gameplay. I don't like it.
Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Today, we're going to get back into Sunrise Stories. Today, I'm going to be reading two stories for you guys, or going over two stories for you. These two stories, you'll probably look at the title and be like, Endure, so is the next title going to be Survive? And the answer is yes. I watched The Last of Us recently, the new TV show that HBO Max did. And I've also played the series, and I was like, I kind of want to do title based on that game, and for some reason I came up with like Endure and Survive, and I thought that was kind of cool. So I'm actually going to be reading both the stories in tandem, so you'll get both of them. These two stories I think I had the title, like the characters in mind for like the longest time, because I wanted to do like a story based off of the two. So this first story is going to be about Chatty, the Treeble. Yes, you heard me right. I did a story off of based on Chatty. The next one is going to be about Robbie. So basically focusing on the two mascots of Sacred Grove, or of Free Realms in general. So yeah, I'm not going to give any more context than that. Other than that, let's get into it. Endure. It was another bright day in Greenwood Forest. People from all over Sacred Grove were stopping by to join in on our camp activities. I was so happy seeing everyone have a good time around the campfire, and I'm sure Robbie was too, even if he's grouchy all the time. I decided to have one of our camp counselors take over for a bit while I took a break. One of my favorite things in the grove was the forest. Everywhere we Treebles flew or ran was nothing but the roots beneath that connected us. It was home. Walking through the forest gave me time to reflect on a lot. I've come a long way since I was just a little Treeb. And I wrote Treeb like, you know, that's like the baby way of saying, like the shorter way of saying Treeble. I don't know. From learning how to fly for the first time to connecting with people all over the grove, it brought me joy knowing I made a difference in the life of everyone around me. I flew up to the tallest tree to get a view of the river. It was breathtaking. You could hear the water as it moved slowly down the stream. You could feel the energy flowing throughout the forest. I could see that this place was in fact alive. Being in Greenwood Forest my whole life has made me feel safe, like I have nothing to fear. This place we call home is our safe haven, and nothing can take it away from us. Just when I was about to head back to the camp, I felt a change in the air. I looked out towards the horizon and saw an explosion of dark purple energy. It started spreading throughout the grove rapidly and made its way towards Greenwood Forest. As I saw this, I flew through the forest as fast as I could to try and warn the others. I looked back at the energy pulsating throughout the forest, and had never seen the grove look so bleak, like corruption was setting in for the first time. So, Chatty got to experience the Gloam invasion, not like everyone else did. Like I said, throughout Sunrise Stories, you're going to see a lot of like, you know, everyone's going to look at the Gloam invasion differently. Everyone's going to experience it differently. It's not going to be the same for everyone. And Chatty gets to see it kind of like firsthand in like this panicked environment. Like he's out in the open. It's not even just like he's in Seaside, he's in Snow Hill. He's in a forest and he gets to see like this all happen. And it's crazy. So yeah, let's get into the next part. I was scared for my life. The dark purple energy was catching up to me, and I knew I was going to be able to fly fast enough to get to the camp. I got to the floor as quick as I could and found a tree stump to hide in. I saw this darkness take over the entire forest in one fell swoop. I felt so hopeless and distraught, knowing there was nothing I could do to save my friends in the forest. I watched as the forest grew darker and darker until there was no light left to see. I felt so trapped and lost. So I want to point out something, too, before we keep going. I don't mention who this is. Like, you can kind of, like, you can depict who it is based on what is said, like, Treebles, Treeb. Like, even though I told you that it is Chatty, I do write it out. Like, if you're reading it for yourself in your free time, before watching this video, I don't mention it's Chatty, which is just great, I think, in terms of writing, because you can try and guess who it is. Like, who is he writing about? Could it be just some random Treeble, or is it someone important? So, yeah, I am writing about Chatty, and you don't know that until I think it's mentioned below. But I thought I'd point that out. So, yeah, let's keep going. I couldn't bear to witness the light fade away from the forest. I turned my back in the little tree stump and cried myself to sleep. It seemed like hours had passed in that low tree stump. When I woke up, there was a light shining on my back, and I could feel it. I turned around to see the sun shining once again on Greenwood Forest. I decided to leave the tree stump, but when I did, the forest I once knew was burned to the ground, nothing but ashes. So yeah, in this case, you know, Diggy wakes up a few hours after the he woke up a few hours later, but to him that was years. I think in this case, Chatty, I mean, it could be the same situation. Like, you know, he wakes up 8 years later. I think that could be also the case. I also do think, like, you know, it could have been, like, a little bit, but I did write that he went to sleep. So I think in this case, like, you know, it could be either or. You could depict it that way. I think, in my opinion, like, I think 8 years in time did pass, but I'm not too sure. I don't know, maybe we could go with the 8 years thing, but I do like that a bunch of time has passed, and this is, like, the sunrise, instead of the, sunset, so... Yeah, anyway, let's keep going. Well, there was a light shining on my back. I could feel it. I turned around to see the sun shining once again in Green Forest. I decided to leave the tree stump, but when I did, the forest I once knew was burned to the ground, nothing but ashes. I stepped on the forest floor for once in Sacred Grove, I couldn't feel anything. I started walking through the forest, anxiously looking for any signs of my Treeble family. Everywhere I looked, there was no signs of life. No signs of people, like I was just wandering in circles. It felt like I had been walking in the forest that was once my home for days. I fell to my knees and saw what looked like Camp Chatty. I reached out for the camp and collapsed before I could move another muscle. I felt someone grab me by the arms and heard them say, "Come on, Chatty, you can't give up on me, you gotta pull through." I recognized that voice. It sounded like Ezra, a friend I've known since I was a little Treeb. He pulled me towards the camp and set me against one of our tents. He had already made a fire from one of the damaged trees. I took him in to catch my breath, and Ezra sat across from me. He tilted his head and asked, "Chatty, we thought you were gone. How'd you survive for so long?" So there are actually a bunch of Treebles that are listed as, like, not characters, but they're listed on the FR Wiki. So there's, I think, a total of 4 Treebles, including Chatty. And yeah, this is the first time that Chatty is mentioned. So I think I do hope when people, if people read the story, that they don't know it's Chatty yet until they read that line. They're like, "Chatty, oh my god," and they start freaking out. I think it's just cool that I didn't write his name in yet. So yeah, but also, like, you can also probably infer that it's probably Chatty based on saying, like, Robbie being grumpy, you know. But yeah, and also the other 3 Treebles, they aren't named. All they are is, like, they're listed as color type, which is just super weird. Like, they aren't even named Treebles. They're just like, hey, this one is a yellow Treeble. Just super odd that they're not named, but I digress. Let's keep going. I looked at him and said, "I was on my way back from a walk when I saw that darkness. I was trying to warn everyone at camp, but I was too late. I hid in a tree stump, and that's how I'm still alive." He looked at me in shock and said, "We barely survived too. Jax, Ludo, and I climbed the tallest trees to escape the wave of darkness." I looked around and asked, "Where are Jax and Ludo?" He looked to the far corners in the forest and said, "Jax suggested looking for any survivors that might be out there, and Ludo went with him." I nodded and asked, What did you think that was? The wave that destroyed our forest. Did you see where it came from?" He sighed and said, "I've never seen anything like it, Chatty. And from what Jax was saying, it could have come from any direction." I nodded and shut my eyes for a moment. I thought about all the lives I could have saved. If I was faster, if I hadn't hidden that tree stump. I felt like a failure, like I should have done more to make it to camp. Suddenly, I heard something that made me open my eyes. It was Jax and Ludo, back from their lawn search. Ludo looked at me and exclaimed, "Chatty, you're alive!" He ran over to hug me, and Jax said, "Glad you're still with us, but the others weren't so lucky in their survival." We all sat around the fire, and Jack said, "We searched every forest in Sacred Grove, including Greenwood. There wasn't a Treeble in sight." I looked in disbelief and asked, "What are you saying?" Ludo cleared his throat and said, "Chatty, we're all that's left. We're the last Treebles of Sacred Grove." So there is like a that's like the big story point in this. It's a very like, this is a very short story, which is why we're doing Survive next. But yeah, they are the last Treebles of Sacred Grove. I also, like, in writing this, I thought, okay, so there's only 4 Treebles listed on the FR Wiki. There's not a lot. It's just Chatty and these 3 Treebles. I thought, what if the Gloam invasion wiped out the Treeble population minus the 4 of them? So, yeah. I thought it was, like, gonna be difficult to write in. I thought, man, all the Treebles dying like that, I thought that would have been crazy to write in, but I think it is kind of fitting because, you know, the Gloam invasion affected everyone differently. So, yeah, let's keep going. I punched my fist in the ground, stood up and said, "I could have done more. I should have done more. It's my fault we're the only ones here." I closed my eyes and felt tears stream down my fur. Ezra got up and said, "It's not your fault they're gone. You didn't cause any of this to happen, but whoever did is going to pay." I sighed and asked, "How are we going to find out who destroyed our forests?" Jax pointed towards Briarwood and said, "I scouted close to the Briarwood and the forests are untouched. I think our answers lie in the vines of Briarwood." Ludo jumped and said, "Come on, Chatty, let's get justice for our family." I wiped the tears from my eyes and said, "You're right. I want answers, and our friends deserve justice. Let's go." We left Greenwood Forest and our camp behind. I wanted to rebuild what we had lost, but more than that, I wanted to know why our species almost went extinct. And I was going to get those answers, no matter the cost. So yeah, that's where Endure ends. Endure is kind of like, it's also a story I want to keep going on, but like later, like when I want to write again, that's a story I want to expand upon, because I feel like, you know, hopefully they get some answers because they're the last Treebles. So they will come back. I think, like, I'll probably write on them again for sure, because it's definitely a story that I want to explore, and they're probably going to get answers one way or another. But let's move on to the next story, Survive. So this is from this is from Robbie's perspective. So the first story is Chatty's perspective of the Gloam invasion. This is going to be Robbie's perspective. So let's keep going. Survive. I woke up from my nap inside one of our tents. I didn't want to get up, but I knew if I didn't, Chatty would get the upper hand. I walked outside the tent and was greeted by one of the camp counselors. He laughed and said, "Hope you got your beauty sleep, Robbie." I frowned at him and said, "I never get my beauty sleep, not with all the yelling out here." He tilted his head and said, "You're hearing things. Besides, you got a camp to run, and I can't do it all myself. I shrugged and said, "Well, the tent nap was good while it lasted. Let's get to work." Like any other day, we would try to put Chatty and his freeloaders to shame. It wasn't always like this. At one point, Chatty and I were the best of friends. So, this is a story I actually did want to explore. The fact that, you know, Chatty and Robbie are always rivals. And it doesn't seem like they were friends at all. It seemed like they always tried to get the better of one another. But I did want to explore that. And also, funny enough, I'm going to... We'll read about it, but I didn't know Robbie was actually a mascot of Free Realms. I thought it was just Chatty, because, you know, that's, for the most part, that's the only thing I thought about whenever I played Free Realms, was like, Chatty is the guy I saw in the commercials, not Robbie. So I didn't know he was a mascot until I read it up and it said he was the mascot of Free Realms. Who knew there were 2 mascots? I thought it was only one, but if you didn't know, now you know. So let's keep going. At one point, Chatty and I were the best of friends. We always tried to one-up each other, whether it was looking for treasure at Seaside or playing tug-of-war at the soccer field. Our friendship made us inseparable. One day, Queen Valerian came to Greenwood Forest and presented us with an opportunity. She wanted us to represent Sacred Grove, so like always, Chatty was quick to agree. I was hesitant, still am to this day, so I asked her why she picked us. She pulled a stone out of her pocket and handed it to me, and said, "You two represent everything I want Sacred Grove to be. Balance, light. Balance, light cannot survive without dark. I hope you'll help us." The stone she presented us with had 2 sides to it. one of light and one of dark. Even now, I still wonder which side I was on. I agreed, and from that day on, everything started to change. Chatty became more involved with the people of Sacred Grove and became more distant from me. I decided to get to know my own kind and where they came from. In some way, Valerian ended our friendship and started a rivalry. I grew tired of being around anyone except Chatty, so I improvised a plan anytime I saw him around Sacred Grove. I did whatever it took to get his attention, from ruining his fun activities to copying what he did. I made sure he knew I wasn't invisible. So, again, I didn't know Robbie was a mascot of Free Realms. So I wrote about how, like, you know, Chatty was getting more attention than Robbie was, basically. And, you know, it seemed like Robbie was getting forgotten about. I think that's an important point because, you know, I don't know. I think Robbie deserves more attention in the spotlight because not everyone thought he was super important. Like, I think more people preferred Chatty over Robbie, and Robbie felt left behind, left out. So I wanted to write about that, and I thought that was a super important point to touch on. So let's keep going. And yet, despite my efforts to show Chatty I was still here, I felt like I didn't exist. I looked over at his camp and wondered if there was anything I could do to rekindle our friendship. I was about to go over to his camp, but then I heard a thunderous roar. I ran outside of Greenwood Forest to get a better look at what made the sound, but what I saw wasn't natural. This giant beam of purple light erupted into the sky, changing the grove around me. Whatever it was, it didn't look good. I was close to Sanctuary, so I ran as fast as I could to find a place to hide. When I arrived in Sanctuary, everyone around me was panicking. It became darker and darker until all I could see was a purple haze. I ran down the street to search for a hiding spot, anything to stay alive. That's when I saw the Pixiewood sign above one of the town shops. So, Robbie's point of view and Chatty's point of view are different because Chatty's in the forest and he sees this wave of darkness come towards the forest. Robbie actually sees where it kind of comes from because he sees this purple beam of light erupting into the sky. So he kind of sees where it comes from. He gets a better vantage point and he gets to see more of it. But let's keep going. I hid behind one of the letters. Not the best spot to lay low, but it would have to do. Something was off, though. Like the people I heard freaking out suddenly disappeared. I peeked around the letter I was hiding behind and saw the creatures I had never seen before in Sacred Grove. Some sort of shadow monsters by the energy they gave off. So, Robbie is actually the first person, well, not the first person, but like he's like one of the people that got to see the shadow monsters up close. He's like one of the only people that got to see it, which is kind of interesting, you know. I don't like the whole shadow monster thing. It's rare when I bring it up because it's not a vital point in the story, but I feel like it's important to bring up throughout Sunrise stories. I bring it up, I think, once or twice in Luck of the Draw, because I believe Bryce is like, he only sees the monsters like a couple times and doesn't really think anything of them, but the people in Sacred Grove got to experience them firsthand, so I wanted them to kind of play this big role. Not big, but like, you know, big enough to where you can notice them and they're a part of the story. So, let's keep going. They all walked in town and started hurting people like they were being controlled. I was horrified at what I was witnessing. Lives being thrown away like they were disposable. I was about to get down from behind the sign, but then I saw someone stand up for the people. A woman wearing shades and holding a bow stood valiant against those creatures. It wasn't long before the large one struck her with his hand, sent her flying near the hilltop. I thought about going down there to try to help, but I knew I'd be a goner too. I was going to return to my letter, but that's when two figures caught my eye. A dwarf with a top hat and a suit walked side by side with a pixie, but they both seemed unalarmed by the shadow monsters. The dwarf held a crystal in his hand, and all the shadow monsters went into him, like they were energy. They went up the hill, and just like that, Sanctuary was a ghost town. So, Robbie actually saw the Darkchi and Darkthorn. He saw both of them. So, Robbie got to witness a lot of things that some people saw, but not a lot. Like, Robbie's like one of those people that actually got to witness all of this. I think that's like a big point in the story is like, Robbie saw all of this firsthand. Like, he, you know, what other people didn't see, he saw. So, like, in the opposite of, like, Chatty doesn't know what happened. He doesn't know how this whole, where all that dark energy came from that destroyed the forest and almost made his race go extinct. Robbie got to see it firsthand. He kind of knows what's going on. Not entirely, but he has an idea of like, hey, this is who did it. And yeah, I thought it was like an important point in the story that Robbie finds out how all this came to be. You know, he's kind of like seeing it for himself. This is why I say, like, read Luck of the Draw. I still, if you're still watching this, you haven't read Luck of the Draw, I'm shocked. Go read that, because, dude, it's so good. It tells a story that I just love. It's like Burnout. Like, I love writing that story, but Luck of the Draw is just my favorite thing I've ever written. So, yeah, anyway, let's keep going. I felt useless in that moment, like when I was younger being lost in the woods. I went into the cave behind the Pixiewood sign, hoping this nightmare would end if I just went to sleep. When I woke up, a light was shining through the cave I was in. I went outside to see Sanctuary wasn't infested with shadow monsters or dark purple skies. While I was relieved, something inside me said I didn't belong here anymore. I got down from the Pixiewood sign and left Sanctuary in the hopes I would find answers to who I really am. So, Robbie went to sleep, so 8 years passed, and he doesn't know that, but it did happen. Yeah, he went to sleep, and he woke up thinking, I don't belong here anymore, because he felt so disconnected from everything and everyone, he thought it would be better off if he just left. So he did. And we're going to get into that now. 1 year later, I ended up in Sandscale Oasis. I needed to get away from everyone, everything. That includes Shaddy and representing Sacred Grove. If I couldn't be someone in the Grove, I believed I could find myself in the middle of nowhere. If there was one thing I was good at back in the Grove, it was tinkering with scrap. Sunstone Valley was a place filled with scrap, which led me to an opportunity to tinker in a local workshop. Maybe it was a crazy idea to move out to the desert, but I can't go back to what I witnessed in Sanctuary. Here with all my scrap, I felt safe and secure, knowing I could finally be someone. So, he basically has PTSD in a way, of seeing all that stuff. He didn't want to see that at all. He couldn't go back to what he witnessed because he was scared. And he thought going to Sunstone Valley would be a great idea, just escaping the troubles of Sacred Grove. So yeah, let's keep going. A local rob goblin by the name of Petrael took me under his wing when no one else would. The more I learned from him about tinkering, the less I think about Sacred Grove and the horrors I witnessed. I was working in the shop when he stopped by and said, Robbie, you really got a knack for this type of work. I turned my head from the workbench and said, all thanks to you. I knew my copper from my rust before, but now I know how to make something of the scrap. He laughed and said, hey, don't let my teachings go to your head now. I just can't wait to see what you build with all the scrap I gave you. I smiled and said, I hate to spoil the surprise, but I'm building the scrap chopper. He looked at my schematics and said, that's a first. Dwarves usually prefer choppers, and we rob goblins prefer mechs. I grabbed a wrench to tighten one of the bolts on the chopper and said, hey, mechs aren't my thing. I need something I can ride, not some giant contraption. He chuckled and said, fair enough. How about we close the shop for the day and grab a drink? Only the best sarsaparilla around in Sandscale Oasis. I believe, I could be wrong. I'm probably just going to edit it anyway. I believe it's actually sarsaparilla. I could be wrong, but I think that's what I wrote above. But anyway, but I'm actually just going to leave it. I'm going to leave it be. That's bothering me. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Around Sandscale Oasis. I nodded and locked the shop up. We went a little ways out to a pit stop and turned into a small diner. We grabbed a seat and Petrael ordered sarsaparilla for the both of us. He took a sip and asked, so Robbie, what are your plans after this place? I looked at him puzzled and asked, what do you mean? He shrugged and said, I don't know if you've noticed, but people don't live here. Most of us are too scared to settle down in Sunstone Valley, or those who are able to are tougher than all rob goblins combined. I took a sip of my drink and said, where else am I gonna go? I can't go back to the Grove unless you know where to go. I'm staying here. He set his drink down and said, don't get me wrong. I'm happy that I could teach you all I know about messing with scrap, but you're going to get torn to shreds out here. I'm surprised you've lasted as long as you did. I slammed my drink on the counter and said, here I am trying to find myself and you want me gone. I'm heading home. I left the pit stop and went to the place I've been staying at. I sat down in frustration and wondered if I was ever going to belong anywhere. I looked up at the sunset and started letting out some tears. It's becoming harder and harder to keep going, and I don't know if I should even try anymore. I was about to sleep it off when 2 Robgoblins knocked on the wall outside, and one waved and asked, "Well, I'll be. Robbie, is that you?" I turned and asked, "That's my name, but do I know you two?" The one that waved shook his head and said, "Name's Tyrus. This is my buddy Greckle. We've been looking all over for you." I scratched my face and said, "Why? I don't even know you two, and I'm pretty sure I'm not that important." Greckle came inside the shack and said, "On the contrary, a lot of our kind respects you. You practically gave us Robgoblins hope when we didn't have any." I smiled and said, "I appreciate the kind words, but that can't be all you came out here for." Tara stepped forward and said, "Correct. We're here to bring you home, to Glimmer Deep." So, I'm pretty sure, like, Taurus might be from Glimmer Deep. I don't even know. He's just, I think I made up his name also, but the image, the TCG image, almost seems like he could be from Glimmer Deep. Hard to tell, but also Greckle, this is where he comes into play from Riptide. So, yeah, he plays a big role in Robbie's story, where he wants to bring them back to Glimmer Deep. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty cool story that they're here to bring him home, in a way. So, yeah, let's keep going. I tilted my head and asked, "What's Glimmer Deep?" They both gasped, and Greckle said, "It's where all the Robgoblins came from. It's a home that's been blocked for decades. Now that Queen Valerian has finally opened a way to Glimmer Deep, we're on our way home." I was shocked I even had a home besides here to begin with. Sacred Grove was the only home I've ever known about, and now I'm told there's a place where Robgoblins are from? I got up from my seat and said, "When I left Sacred Grove, I came here to find myself. Even here, I'm not wanted, so if you're offering to take me to a new home where we're welcome, I gladly accept." Taurus nodded and said, "The way I hear it, everyone is accepted there, but we should probably get going now or we're going to be late." I tilted my head and asked, "What's the rush?" Greckle cleared his throat and said, "We told a lot of our kind that you'd be coming. A lot of people waiting to meet you." I was stunned and said, "All right, let's get going then." I went with them to the entrance of Glimmer Deep and saw a tunnel leading underground. I stood there for a moment, knowing I'd be leaving everything behind for a brand new life. I took a deep breath and started traversing underground. It was a short trip, but when we arrived at a cliffside, my jaw dropped. Greckle laughed and said, "Robbie, welcome to the city of Glimmer Deep." So again, that's also, this is your new home, pal. Take it all in as long as you need. So this is how I introduced Glimmer Deep in the first place in Luck of the Draw. Again, if you haven't read Luck of the Draw, you're crazy. Go read it. But I introduced a lot of areas that weren't talked about or introduced in the original Free Realms game, and I thought it was a great way to do that, just to introduce new areas, and I thought it was like a huge point in the Luck of the Draw story. So, yeah, let's keep going. To find out there was an entire city beneath Sunstone Valley was breathtaking. I turned to Taurus and asked, "What if no one wants me around?" He shook his head and said, "Trust me, unlike those Sacred Grovians, we'll be wanted here, especially you given your reputation. This is going to be everything you've ever dreamed of." I nodded and took my first steps in the city. When I saw the tall buildings and the Robgoblins all around, I felt like I belonged. They were so welcoming and made me feel like I meant something to them. For the first time in my entire life, and for years to come, I knew I was finally home. So that is Survive and also Endure. I hope you guys enjoyed these stories. I know I enjoyed writing them. At least these two were pretty cool to write. They were pretty. I think I liked them a lot. I like that, you know, we got to explore like what happened with Chatty, what happened with Robbie in this time of the Glum invasion. And yeah, Robbie's story was kind of like a finding out who he was, like finding himself. And I think that was super important because, again, I had no idea he was a mascot until like I looked it up. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!